Welcome to the Necronama.com, where we're spending all of October looking at 31 episodes of The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. Today, we're looking at Treehouse 15 from November 7th, 2004. I am James Sabato.
And I'm Don Guillory.
And I'm Thomas Brungardt.
So we're back.
Yeah, we've got episode 15.
Almost halfway there.
This is the first time. This is the first time they've had like an intro that I wished was an actual sketch, like in the show. The Keeping It Kodos starring Kang. It's one of the funniest. It's one of the funniest things to me in this whole run we've done so far. Had that been in like its like own segment, it would have been my favorite segment of all time.
I just like Homer like eating himself. I think that's fantastic.
And starting with his legs, though. I mean, don't you think it would have started with his arm? It's closer.
Well, I mean, that knee was right there.
Well, here's what that opening did for me. It was a cool throwback to 80s comedies or 80s sitcoms. But it really made me miss shows or stupid shows like Perfect Strangers when they were first on. And then it made me sad because I realized that Perfect Strangers led to the spinoff of Family Matters, which then quickly became the Steve Urkel show. So
yeah, I love Family Matters.
No, I liked it until it just became Steve Urkel all the time.
Well, that's fair. You didn't like Stefan Urkel?
No, I didn't like the Bruce Lee version. I didn't like the robot version. I didn't like
the Bruce Lee version. I forgot about that.
But I mean, this is really cool for like nostalgia purposes. But yeah, I agree. This would be for a cool episode in itself, or just a sketch on Treehouse of Horror. But you know, it is what it is.
Well, I do want to say that I agree with you about Family Matters and the Urkel show, but for those who haven't watched it and just think of that show as, you know, Steve Urkel being crazy, there was a time early on when Steve was a very sensitive character and they were tackling like actual social issues before it went off the deep end. So there is substance to Family Matters, still relevant to today.
Maybe we'll get the drama version one day.
All right, so you want to get into the first one?
Yeah, let's do that.
We didn't even talk about Waldo Faldo, but sure, I guess.
No, go for it.
No.
No. All right, so the NED Zone. First off, I absolutely adore the Dead Zone, so this makes me happy just because of that. But this skit has my favorite death that I've seen in a Treehouse of Horror up to this point. I didn't know that anything could beat Ned when he's a zombie and the whole, how'd you know he was a zombie? But no, this one beats that. And so Homer has his frisbee up on the roof, and he basically tries to throw a bowling ball after it. The ball hits Ned in the head. Ned goes to the hospital, and he starts having visions of people's deaths, and he sees Dr. Hibbert fall to his death, and then he's like, oh my God, I have visions of people's deaths. And this is where we get my favorite. He runs into Hans Moleman, and he... See, I can't even talk about it. I love it so much. Hans is eaten by alligators in the vision. And Ned's like, oh my God, and then accidentally knocks him into a fucking sewer where Hans gets eaten by alligators. And I laughed so hard I had to pause it because I just loved this so much. So, yeah. I don't even want to talk about the rest. No. And then, you know, he goes to a Rosie O'Donnell musical, but says that he doesn't need special powers to know that that's closing. And then he sees himself shooting Homer. And it becomes this thing where he wonders how that could possibly be. And he kind of tries to get away from him. And then eventually he finds out that Homer causes the end of the world by blowing up the nuclear plants. and Ned tries to stop him, shoots Homer with this long extended fucking scene of Homer almost hitting the destruct button after he's shot. And then he finally lands on it. And Flanders says, "Oh, you stupid son of a..." And then the place blows up. And the world ends. So yeah, Hans Moleman is eaten by alligators. I don't know if I mentioned that. What do you guys think of this one?
I don't have much to add. I also enjoyed the Dead Zone, and I didn't hate this sketch. I thought they did a good enough job with it. Yeah, I thought it was just fine.
I think it's fun.
I like the extra drawing out of Homer where he's falling on, at least on the panel, and then falling away from the panel and forward from the panel, and then falls down, and then, he hits his tongue, right? His tongue pushes the button, of all things. But I like it, but it's one of those things that you kind of question about the future. If you knew the future, would you tell anybody? Or if you knew somebody who was like, you had these visions that they were going to die, would you tell them? And I think that's kind of a cool thing to process, or at least a cool thing to have to deal with and stress over.
I know me, and the answer to that is absolutely that I would not tell them. And I would spend so much time trying not to tell them that I would fuck up and tell them. Because I would get so weird that they would finally be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And then I'd have to tell them. So that's pretty much the process.
I don't know. That's one of those things where it's if it was me, you wouldn't tell me. You would just be like, "No, we don't have to record that day. That's fine." No, I'll probably say something like, "Bitch, you're gonna die."
And I'd be like, "Okay, you say that every day." And then
that would probably be my reaction to you saying it. "Don, there's somebody outside with a fucking cross burning in your yard." I'm like, "Shut the fuck up, man. Stop with that." "No, you gotta listen to me, man.
I live in Mississippi. That's every day."
Yeah.
I think part of the problem is he doesn't know when it's going to happen. He just knows that how they die, right? Like, you can't gauge time. Because I think if you could, like, what I would do is, if I knew somebody was going to die tomorrow, like that day, I would just borrow a bunch of money from them. But if they're going to die like 2 years from now, I'm not going to borrow the money now. I'll have to wait. But you got all these like fucking long-term things. That's too complicated.
You bring up an interesting point, actually, because the others, he does see it right before it happens.
Yeah.
And then Homer's is just very open-ended.
It's a long burn. And you could probably sell that as a service, though, like at a fair, like a festival. You have a tent, and it's like reading palms. You're just telling people how they're going to die.
You know how great that would be? It'd be like, "Oh, hello, Thomas. Let me look at... Oh, you die when you're 86." And you'd be like, "Yeah, I'm going to do something stupid." And you'd go, like, jump off of a really high building. And then I'd be like, "Fuck."
Well, no. If you have that vision that they're going to die at that moment, would anything change?
I mean, I'm going to get out of the splatter zone.
No. I mean, if he jumps off the building, what's to say that something doesn't prevent him from falling all the way?
Aim for the bushes.
Or he's just horribly injured.
I'm very badly burned.
You shot me in the arm.
I can't believe you shot me. Both of my legs are broken. But I am still alive. If anybody gets that reference,
in November.
I think everybody should get that reference.
They can tweet us if they want to know. But like I was saying before, I think this is a skill you can monetize. And I've had 2 previous ideas for stupid festival tents, but this one is probably the best. It's a good way to con people out of money.
And that's what we're really here for.
You could have like a chart of like all the times you've been right. Like, look at all these obituaries. I fucking called it.
Wow.
But would you need references for that? Like, how would the people feel if you called them up and said, "I need you to verify that I was right about your husband's death"? Are they really going to be, forthcoming with talking about that?
Well, on the epitaph of their tombstone, it just says, "Well, he was right."
I told you fuckers I was sick.
Nobody believed me. Nobody believed what the guy at the fair said.
All right. Well, let's jump to the next one. It is, unless anybody has anything else on this one, but we got 4 Beheadings and a Funeral. It's a parody from hell, but it's the greatest thing about it is it allows Lisa and Bart to assume the roles of Sherlock Holmes and Watson in order to find out who's been, committing these murders. Who is the mutton chop murderer? Which is, of course, supposed to be the version of Jack the Ripper. I thought this was kind of a cool one. It had a couple of cool gags in it. We have 2 Kang and Kodo sightings because we had it in the opening, and then you have them during this sketch as well. But what ends up happening, which is kind of funny, is that everything that's happening in the story is an opium-fueled dream that Ralph Wiggum is having.
That's true.
Which there's so much to process with Ralph smoking opium.
Was it for his upset stomach? Is that what it was?
It was for the dying that tickled.
Oh, that's right.
Oh my!
Just another Ralph being stupid gag.
My cat's breath smells like cat food.
What did the two of you think? I mean, I really didn't get anything out of this other than a couple of the gags that were here, and even the historical references with opium and even the xenophobia that's kind of tied to that with the opium dens that you would find in places like London, New York, San Francisco.
This is another time I was just overly disappointed.
Yeah,
there's so much lore with Jack the Ripper, and they could have gone so many places if they just put any work into it. And I feel like this one had a lot of potential, and instead they were just like opium jokes.
Yeah, but I did like that the hookers were like the school teachers and Princess Cashmere and whoever else. That was the only thing I enjoyed. Much like the previous episode with the Frankenstein bit, where I just wrote dumb. For this one, I just wrote boring because I expected it to be so much more interesting, and it just fell flat for me. Like the turn wasn't good, and there was no prestige. There was just a turn, and it was just not impressive to me. And that's how I felt.
I agree.
I
will say I really hate the duster for Prince joke.
Yeah. It's a little on the nose, right?
It was so forced. So badly forced.
Yeah, and like you were saying, there's so much lore behind this story. I would have loved to have seen a more compelling Jack the Ripper act.
I think even if you would have added like Jack the Ripper in the background, and like when he sees Wiggum getting arrested, just like and like wandering off.
That would have been funny,
yeah. I think that's a really easy joke to fix it with, and they didn't even bother with that.
And
also,
it should have been Mo.
Yes, definitely. And this man never murders mutton chops. I watched. So there you go.
Should we move on to the third act?
Yes,
in
please.
The belly of the boss.
In the belly of the boss. Like in the belly of the beast. And it starts off, they're at the science convention, and Professor Frink again is in it, and he's presenting this big pill that he's going to shrink down. It has everything. It has riboflavin and whatever else. And Maggie sees it, and Maggie associates it with a ball pit. And she's like, oh, I'm going to go play in that fucking ball pit. So she climbs up into it, gets in it. Nobody notices because nobody ever notices what Maggie does. She gets shrunk. And and then Mr. Burns takes the pill because he thinks it will keep him healthy, and it turns out that Maggie can be heard with her pacifier, so they shrink down immediately because they have a debigulator, and they fly in.
Thank you.
You were going to say debigulator?
I was, but I'm so glad you did it.
They finally got it. They finally got their debigulator, and they go in there to save Maggie, and then Homer sacrifices himself so they can get out, and he ends up rebigulating inside of Mr. Burns, and then there's just a stupid "I've got you under my skin" song gag at the end. There are aspects of this I enjoy, but overall, it's another one that I was just disappointed with. It felt really disconjointed and really rushed. What do you guys think?
Why are they always trying to combine Homer and Mr. Burns?
It's an odd couple. It's an unlikely duo.
I don't know. It seems pretty likely at this point.
Well, yeah.
Well, actually, what I think it is, if we're going to pick up from things like Marx and Hegel, I think it's the capitalist way of saying that the worker is tied to the. I can't come up with it.
Well, that is deep. Oh, you almost had it. Ooh.
I was going for it, but I was like, no, this is going to go too deep into that. No, I think there would be there is a possible argument that could be made for a criticism on U.S. labor and I guess the 1%. And I'm being serious at this moment. I'm not joking. The idea that Homer is so connected to his job, like you start to identify with the guy, your employer as well. So I could see that connection. He's relying on the employer for his employment and paycheck, and Mr. Burns is definitely dependent on people like Homer as laborers. So you have that symbiotic relationship.
Is this the time that Homer is finally not selfish? He saves his family and he stays behind.
No, he's still selfish because his antics like hinder the mission, right? Because he's eating Mr. Burns' ribs.
I say when we eat.
There's still a full rack left over there.
There can't be that much meat on those bones, though.
No kidding.
I do like when the ship gets lodged in his heart. I thought that was funny.
Am I the only one who was hoping that Smithers would say something about wanting to be the man inside of you?
I was waiting for that too.
That would have been a great opportunity to get into that.
We know what you think.
Or it would have been funny if Smithers was like the captain of the mission. He's like, I know Mr. Burns' insides better than anyone else.
Oh, that would have been amazing. Just me and my seamen going through Mr. Burns' body. All right, I'll stop.
See, that would have been great. That would have been funny.
Hey, James, how did the Necronomicon get canceled?
So much that upsets me about this run of episodes that we've done is that it makes me dislike The Simpsons. And I hate that every time we go through these now, it just feels negative because it shouldn't be, because it's a fun show. But I always say that this is my favorite TV show, and this is making me rethink that.
Well, I don't think that's fair, though. Like, Treehouse of Horror is definitely not reflective of The Simpsons overall. I mean, I think it definitely points out seasons where there were problems and stuff like that, but I don't know. I don't think that it's necessarily the same. Like, I don't feel like they rushed through other episodes the same way that they just sort of pushed these together sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I suppose so.
Also, as a lifetime wrestling fan, I'll tell you that the more you love something, the more you bitch about it. So my wife bitches about me all the time.
This concludes another episode of the Necronomicon with James Sabata, Don Guillory, and Thomas Sexbot Brungardt.